Alrighty. Yay!
Yay! Uncle Warren, guess what? I applied to rent an apartment yesterday, and they wanted my credit score, a letter of recommendation from my kindergarten teacher, and my vaccination record.
Yeah, well, that's nothing. I had to submit my horoscope, take a blood test, and provide sourdough starter as a security deposit. I guess we're going to be talking
What a
about
world we
that.
live in.
We'll be talking about that today on The Undercurrent. All right, welcome everybody to
Welcome
the maiden voyage of the starship
of the
Undercurrent.
Undercurrent. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Just a quick shout out. If you are following on Instagram or watching this on Instagram, please understand that we can't see your comments as they're made on Instagram. I will try and check periodically, but obviously we're focusing on show notes and everything. So if you have a comment, you might want to hop onto YouTube or something, or Rumble or something like that. But again, thank you all so much for joining us today. We got a
Yeah,
lot of news.
yeah. If we and if you can, if you let us know, we've been trying to deal with the audio situation, make sure our audio levels and stuff. We're trying not to make you go deaf with the opens and closes, the videos that we have in here. That was my fault. The other day we had that, and it was like way too loud. So, but it's all good.
We got a lot of folks in there. Hi, Bella. Great to see you. Hi, Zalippa. We got Willie Bragg. We got Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Yes, thanks. We're hoping this show actually does some good for people. You know, we
Yeah.
don't want to sit up there and just listen to ourselves talk. I know I don't.
Hmm.
I we had a little echo thing yesterday, and it was driving me nuts. But it was like unavoidable. But I was just like, I was hearing my voice, and I was like,
Oh, I'm
hey.
so sorry, Uncle
Well, no,
Warren.
it wasn't your fault. You were in a different location and all, but it was just that's my thing. And when I was in radio, it was the same thing. I couldn't you could hear yourself in your voice when you spoke, and I didn't like that, so I always turned the pot down on me on so I didn't hear myself. So I don't know. Maybe it's just I don't know. Maybe a self-deprecation thing or something like that. Yeah, we're live on our YouTube channel here on the Undercurrent with Laney and Warren, and also on my YouTube channel on Extra Bulla. So you know, if you can, if you could subscribe to the Undercurrent, it's the Undercurrent, the number 4 and YOU. I think the link is in our link tree down below too, so you can always access that. And we're gonna be adding a lot more to
Yes.
that link tree as we grow. So,
Also, you'll see also in the show description, or there should be at least on YouTube, and you can also, I think, find it on the link tree. We have a Substack, and that's going to be our newsletter, but also our source of show notes. So if you want to click on that, you can actually find our show notes. You can actually find the our sources that we use, so you can check up on us, let us know that. Hey, Uncle Warren, Bella has got some good tips for you right over there, just so you know. Um, you're 6 dB louder than Laney.
so yeah, you
That's
just
what.
means that just means you need to crank up your volume a little bit.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, let's try and crank this up a little bit, and I do appreciate it. Let's go in, try and get this a little louder.
I don't know, maybe just bring it a little closer to your mouth, maybe, or maybe bring your mouth closer to it. That may
How's it?
help.
How is this sounding? How is this sounding?
I guess it sounds pretty good. Let me see. Let me try one more thing before all hell breaks loose. Let's see if I can just do this. Go ahead and say something again.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Hmm. Okay, good enough for government work, I guess. I think
Wait a
we're
minute! I thought
okay.
there was a shutdown.
Yeah, there is. Hey, that's a good segue. Uh, so we have here the uh, This is the government shutdown. This is part of, wait a minute. I got a thing for this. This is part of the Riptide. Ooh, oh, the Riptide. Yes, these are our headlines for the day, for October 1st. Hey, it's the first day of October, too. So, this is good stuff. We got the U.S. government shutdown began midnight as partisan division rules Washington. And there's always some nefarious reasons why they shut down the government, too, right? It's always some sort of control thing, you know. So the U.S. government shut down much of its operations today as deep partisan divisions prevented Congress and the White House from reaching a funding deal, setting off what could be a long and grueling standoff that could lead to the loss of thousands of federal jobs. I think that's probably been the key all along. That's what Trump's been trying to do, is get rid of federal employees. There was no clear path out of the impasse, while agencies warned that the 15th government shutdown since 1981 would halt the release of a closely watched September employment report. Oh, how about that? That was gonna delay the release or halt the release. Yeah, and those numbers are not going to be looking good. That's spoiler alert. They're not going to be looking good. Slow air travel. Suspend scientific research without pay from withhold pay from U.S. troops, and lead to the furlough of 750,000 federal workers at a daily cost of $400 million. President Trump, whose campaign to radically reshape the federal government is already on track to push out some 300,000 workers by the end of the year, warned congressional Democrats that a shutdown could clear the path for more job cuts. Vice President J.D. Vance issued an unusual warning about air safety, noting that air traffic controllers and Transportation Security Administration, that's TSA personnel, essential staff who work through shutdowns, would be worried about delayed paychecks. Yeah, the last thing you want to do with a stressed out air traffic controller is tell them they ain't getting paid, right? Have a safe flight.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's probably somebody you should probably pay. If you're going to make them work. I guess, what was it the last time there was a shutdown that the air traffic controllers started calling in sick. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure you're going to see that again. This is what the vice president said. If you're flying today, I hope, of course, you arrive safely and on time, but you may not arrive on time because the TSA and the air traffic controllers are not getting paid today. And Lainey, with all the plane crashes that we've been having basically since Trump got back in office, I don't know if I want to fly anyway, especially I ain't going to fly now. Yeah, I ain't doing that.
That's not going to be, top priority. I don't know if he wants trying to tank the airline industry or what, but there we go. And what about that war on terror? That's, if you're, not paying the TSA.
Yeah, and that Epstein list too. What about that? Senate Democrats on Tuesday blocked a stopgap measure to fund the government through November 21st over Republicans' refusal to attach an extension of health benefits for millions of Americans that are due to expire at the end of the year. Republicans say the issue must be addressed separately. Both sides were posturing to blame the other and looking for advantage in the 2026 midterm elections that will determine control of Congress. Yeah, that's the thing. It's this kind of shenanigans and stuff. Voters are like, what are you guys doing? Senate Republican leader John Thune scheduled another series of votes today, hoping to pressure Democrats to break ranks. As the shutdown was set to delay the release of some government economic reports, adding unease to Wall Street investors at a time of economic uncertainty, to say the least. I thought Wall Street was doing really well, though, Lainey, weren't they? Weren't they saying that it's just really... Because, they equate it with the economy that you and I deal with, right? So if the stock market's doing good, we're doing good, right? Isn't that how that works? No?
Yeah, I guess if we have stocks...
Yeah, a lot of us don't. So yeah, I think that's always been a big misnomer. How people say, "Oh, well, Wall Street's doing great, so the economy must be doing good." No, that's Just because your
Yeah,
local
yeah.
casino's doing fine doesn't mean the rest of the county's doing very well. So
But
just
as
saying.
Bila says here in the chat, peppers are still growing, horses are still grazing. So
That's right.
but but you have what's going on Wall Street, and then what you have what's going down, in fields and on farms, and you have in cities and towns and sidewalks, and that's a kind of a different world.
Yeah, so Wall Street opened lower. Gold struck a record high because of all the crazy prepper people who are like, gold, gold. And I
Oh,
tell you,
gold.
gold's not going to do you any good once the apocalypse hits, right? What's going to be gold? Food, clean water, breathable air, maybe. But gold, I don't think you can eat gold. You could probably eat it. It's probably not very nutritious, though. You definitely can't drink it. Game of Thrones taught us that. Remember when they poured the gold down the dude's throat?
Never saw it. Never saw that show.
Oh yeah. Well, you didn't want to see that part. That was pretty fucking
That'd be
brutal.
icky. Yeah.
It was pretty brutal. And Asian stocks wavered as investors worried about delays in the release of key data and the impact of job losses. The dollar hovered near a 1 week low versus major peers. All of these, we're not going to read the whole thing like I usually do on my other shows there, but I just want to give you a gist of this so we can talk about it too. And like we said, all these are going to be you can read these in full on our Substack. What is it? Is it the Undercurrent for you .substack.com?
Substack. It's spelled. It's Undercurrent for you. Substack.com. It should be in the description on YouTube, show description on YouTube.
Yeah.
But yeah, Undercurrent number 4 you, just the letter U, Substack.com.
And those links are there now if you want to read along with us. It's kind of like story time. Only these stories suck. So, so let's talk about the Democrats. Their focus on healthcare funding. They're under pressure from their frustrated supporters to score a rare victory ahead of the 2026 midterm elections that will determine control of Congress for the final 2 years of Trump's term. The healthcare push has given them a chance to unite behind an issue that resonates with voters, and I believe they're talking about the ACA, what is that called? The
Affordable Care Act.
I already I had forgotten about it, and
I think we all forgot about it. We've been trying to forget about it.
But let's get into the meat and taters. What happens now that a government shutdown is underway? So what happens in a shutdown now that a lapse in funding has occurred? The law requires agencies to furlough their accepted employees who include those who work to protect life and property. Of course, got to protect property. Stay on the job, but don't get paid until after the shutdown ends. So they're basically they're not working for free. They're going to get back pay eventually for this, but they ain't getting paid now. If it's a really short shutdown, like a day or two, they're going to be fine. But I think the last one, though, was like over a month.
That was like 6 weeks, was it? Something like
that?
I remember it was, I was trying to get some stuff done, and it's like it was with the federal government, and it was just impossible.
Yeah, so a lot of federal services that are non-essential will be non-functioning today, but I think like the courts, the IRS, a lot of that stuff they're going to be open. But
the IRS was not. I mean, you mean there was some essential employees there, but for the most part, most work was not happening at the IRS. I was actually trying to get in touch with them, and couldn't do it. They weren't talking to anybody. There was no motion or anything going on.
Well, probably so many people hate them that they're probably used to screening calls and going.
The post office is still going though, because the post office has separate funding.
Right. So, like your local stuff, like in your cities, like your DMV and stuff like that, those are still, because that operates more like city and state. That's not like federal stuff. Yeah. So now that a lapse in funding has occurred, the law requires to furlough their non-accepted employees. The White House Office of Management and Budget, that's OMB, not to be confused with OMD, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, that band from the 1980s, Begins the process with instructions to agencies that a lapse in appropriations has occurred and they should initiate orderly shutdown activities. That memo went out yesterday. So the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, estimates roughly, like we said, 750,000 federal employees could be furloughed at roughly $400 million daily. That's a lot of bread and cheese. So what government work continues during a shutdown? So FBI investigators, unfortunately, ICE is still functioning during the shutdown.
Wrecking havoc everywhere, yes.
Oh, yeah. Wasting people's time in downtown cities. FBI investigators, CIA officers, air traffic controllers, and agents operating airport checkpoints keep working. So do members of the armed forces. Those programs that rely on mandatory spending generally continue during a shutdown. So Social Security payments will still be going out. Seniors relying on Medicare coverage can still see their doctors, and healthcare providers can be reimbursed. Veteran healthcare also continues during the shutdown. The VA medical centers and outpatient clinics will be open, and VA benefits will be processed and delivered. Burials will continue at VA national cemeteries. So will the furloughed federal workers get paid? Yes. So in 2019, Congress passed a bill enshrining into law the requirement that furloughed employees get retroactive pay once operations resume. So like we said, they'll just get the back pay once, or, like if this is over before the regular end of the pay period, I guess it's gonna, it's gonna do that. It's gonna, be there on time anyway. While they'll eventually get paid, the furloughed workers and those who remain on the job may have to go without one or more of their regular paychecks, like we said, depending on how long the shutdown lasts. What's up, Willie? Good morning to you. Hopefully you're doing well. Okay, we probably hide that there. Service members will also receive back pay for missed paychecks once federal funding resumes. And yes, the post office is unaffected. It's an independent entity funded through the sale of its products and services, not by tax dollars. So when the post office is selling you stuff, they're trying to take care of themselves. So get you some stamps. Enjoy yourself.
You can't get stamps at post offices anymore.
What?
Yeah, it was a thing. I was, seriously, you guys want to talk about, I was in Chicago when I was living there, and I had to get a money order. I go into the post office, and they say, no, we don't do money orders here anymore. And Chuck, listen to me on this before you start arguing. Seriously, I go in there and they said, we don't do money orders here. You can go to this one and this one to get a money order. I've never heard of this in my life. As I'm leaving, a guy goes into the post office and he's asked to buy some stamps, and they say, we're not selling stamps here anymore either. And told him to go somewhere else to get stamps.
Maybe it's that particular location.
Well,
maybe.
It was, but the other people were having the same problem in Chicago. And by the way, even down here, for example, I went to the post office to mail something, and it turns out the post office is no longer offering overnight delivery.
There
you have to go to UPS or FedEx for overnight. They'll say we'll do an express delivery, but they won't do it overnight. Just a little bit of backstory there for everybody.
So what's going to close during this thing? So all administrations get some leeway to choose which services to freeze or maintain in a shutdown. During Trump's first term, he worked to blunt the impact of what became the country's longest partial shutdown in 2018 and 2019. Tuesday, Trump threatened the possibility of increasing the pain that comes with the shutdown. And there's the shit that he's talking about. Nobody really cares about that. Each federal agency develops its own shutdown plan. The plans outline which workers would stay on the job during the shutdown, which would be furloughed. In a provocative move, the Office of Management and Budget has threatened the mass firing of federal workers in a shutdown. An OMB memo said those programs didn't get funding through Trump's mega bill this summer would bear the brunt of a shutdown. Agencies should consider issuing reduction in force notices for those programs whose funding expires that don't have alternative funding sources and are not consistent with the president's priorities, the memo said. Yeah, so I believe it's kind of like the same thing as last time. Some of the same, because people were asking about like the parks, the national parks and stuff like that. I believe the open air ones, they said, the ones like the roads and stuff like that, they'll still do trash pickup. There was like some other minimal services that they were doing. But the parks are supposed to still be open.
I
So
remember last time though there were all kinds of problems though with some trash pickup in some places. And there's
yeah,
also a problem with like the Joshua trees. I remember there was something with the Joshua trees that they were not being, people were leaving trash around or whatnot. And oh, by the way, hey Animus and Peace Dove, great to see y'all. But yeah, there was other problems with the parks that were happening, and it was pretty sad.
So Health and Human Services, that's RFK Jr.'s domain, will furlough about 41% of its staff out of nearly 80,000 employees, according to a contingency plan on its website. So furlough means they're not fired; they're just like taken out of the job, but are still on the payroll. Is that kind of how that works? A furlough?
Yeah, but I think furlough, they are still considered employees, but they're not going to work and they're not being paid. That's my understanding of what a furlough is. But the expectation is that you're coming back. It's not
Right.
like you've been laid off. The
Right.
expectation is that you are coming back.
It's like a layoff without the layoff. It's like the layoff slash comeback, where a layoff is just to get the hell out of here.
Good to see you too, CBC voter.
Um, so they're going to furlough about 41% of their staff. The CDC is going to continue to monitor disease outbreaks while activities that will stop include research into health risks and ways to prevent illness. I thought that probably stopped a long time ago, but anyway. Meanwhile, research and patient care at the National Institutes of Health would be upended. Patients currently enrolled in studies at the research-only hospital, nicknamed the House of Hope, will continue to receive care. Additional sick patients hoping for access to experimental therapies can't enroll except in special circumstances, and no new studies will begin. Okay, so at the FDA, when we significantly, okay. So their ability to protect and promote public health and safety would be significantly impacted, with many activities delayed or paused. For example, the agency would not accept new drug applications. What? No crazy drug with deadly side effects? That's too bad. Or medical device submissions that require payment of a user fee. So here's where we were talking about the parks there. So the Park Service, National Park Service, plans to furlough about 2/3 of its employees while keeping parks largely open to visitors during the shutdown. That's according to their contingency plan released yesterday. So park roads, lookouts, trails, and open-air memorials will generally remain accessible to visitors. A lot of those are just kind of like self-serve type stuff, things in the park anyway, unless you're getting like a tour from a park, guide or something like that. I think those things are probably not going to happen, but you're on your own in the parks. Bigfoot's got open season on you.
And here's a bit about not Joshua Tree. There was an off-roader mowing down one of the namesake trees at Joshua Tree. There was vandalism and all kinds of that kind of stuff.
So the plan also allows parks to enter into agreements with states, tribes, or local governments willing to make donations to keep national park sites open. I guess it really depends on where the park is and the surrounding areas that are able to help them financially, I guess. So the Park Service has more than 400 sites, including large national parks such as Yellowstone and Grand Canyon, national battlefields, and historic sites. What if Yellowstone erupts during the shutdown? I mean, does it really matter when it erupts?
Wanting to say I'd pay to see that? No, I really don't want that to happen. But
that's like that movie 2012 with Woody Harrelson's just standing there, yes, and he's right there at Yellowstone Park. So sites could close if damage is being done to the park resources or garbage is building up, kind of like that happened last time. Many national parks, including Yellowstone and Yosemite, stayed open during the last one. Limited staffing led to vandalism and gates being pried open and other problems. and off-road mowing down of the namesake trees. Why? Why would you mow down a Joshua tree? That is just the
People
stupidest.
do all kinds of stupid things. Why would people shut down a federal government?
Because they're stupid.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I guess we answered our own question there. Smithsonian Institute, the museums, research centers, and the National Zoo will remain open through at least, well, I guess through at least next Monday. Do they? I don't know. They don't rely. They rely on federal funding, don't they? I think so. So Philip Swagel, is that his name? Director of the Congressional Budget Office said a short shutdown doesn't have a huge impact on the economy, especially since federal workers by law are paid retroactively. But if a shutdown continues, then that can give rise to uncertainties about what is the role of government in our society and what's the financial impact on all the programs that the government funds. I wouldn't mind if it's going to be like a long shutdown. I wouldn't mind seeing something like change. Maybe get rid of some of that bureaucracy that's in there. The unneeded stuff. I'm not talking about like stuff that helps people. More of that, please. But less BS, please, as well. So, yeah. And then we told you about the markets and how they're dealing with this. So, yeah. So, this shutdown it really it just seems to me more like a scare tactic kind of thing. It's a pissing contest between two parties that nobody likes. And you're like, what do you got? What kind of political games do you think they're playing here?
I don't know. Hey, Tom, good to see you. Good to see you, friend.
Hey, Tom.
And yeah, they're playing around. It's designed as a distraction, perhaps. We got other considerations, and now we can blame both sides. I hate that phrase, by the way, both sides, as if there are only two sides in American politics, which is simply not the case. If we had a parliamentary system, we could express a little bit more nuance, but hey, here we are. This is, it's distressing. It really is distressing to also see, troops being put into American cities. We're going to talk about that later, but right now, there's federal money for what the executive wants, or in this case, the party in power wants, but there isn't for the rest of us.
Yeah. And that's usually the case.
And they're willing to play with the lives of federal workers. One thing that people have pointed out is when you go after the administrative or the regulatory state, when you go after these agencies, you're going after the agencies that employ a lot of people, giving them still very solid benefits and pensions, which have pretty much kind of are not really in the private sector anymore. And also these federal or regulatory jobs have been the stepping stone for many people of color, for women, people with disabilities, into solid middle class careers. So there's a lot more, I think, going on than just not liking all the regulations and the agencies. It's the employment that it offers. And this puts them in a real bind because, as some folks have pointed out, try telling, if you can't pay the credit card company, if you can't pay your landlord, they're not obligated to worry about their individuals being put on furlough or not receiving pay.
Yeah, exactly. So to nutshell it, it's basically, if it's short, it's like a few days, you really don't have anything to worry about. It's probably just business as usual. You may get a little inconvenience at some of your federal offices that you need to go to. But, if we were talking about weeks and weeks and weeks, particularly with the federal the federal workers in the TSA and your what do they call them? The people in the towers. God, I just said it.
Air traffic controllers.
Yeah, your air traffic controllers. Those are the people you want to keep happy. Right. Now, I
Yeah.
know, you remember back in the 80s when the air traffic controllers went on strike and Reagan fired them all, remember?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
remember
was
that. Yeah.
yeah, that was a good idea to
Yeah.
bring in less experienced air traffic controllers. And I think I don't have the numbers in front of me, obviously, and I'm just kind of guessing, but I'm assuming there was more uh, airplane problems during that time where you had like midair collisions and stuff like that. That's the thing. That's why you want people who know their stuff at the helm of these jobs, because you know you're talking about literal lives in the air. So
Yeah.
anyway, so we'll keep an eye on this
We will.
and see how this progresses. If it's doing this next week, I'm sure we'll be talking about it again too. So. But we got more news for
We do.
you.
We got a lot more news, and we've got some great stories, so we should be moving on.
Yeah, we're halfway into this, so we need to put a little hitch in our giddy up.
We do.
So, news desert sprout as Wyoming loses 8 newspapers in 5 counties in a day.
And we're going to be talking about this further into the show about what's going on to keep AM radio in vehicles. But it's part of a whole thing that's happening in the U.S. with a loss of media outlets, local media outlets all over the country. We think of our everything of us being a media saturated culture, but a lot of that is internet, it's digital, and what we're not necessarily seeing is local media outlets, newspapers, radio, local television stations that are providing local news and information. I've been reporting on this for years, and I'm going to continue to report on it because I think it's absolutely critical. And this is an example. We have in Wyoming. We've got an area. We've got a bunch of towns that have lost their local newspapers, and there's a real devastation when that happens.
So last night, the latest edition of the Pinedale Roundup had been put to bed, an endearing term used by generations of print journalists when the next day's newspaper is edited, laid out, and ready for the printers. Pinedale Roundup managing editor Callie O'Hare put the paper to bed before heading home herself, expecting to send the files on Wednesday morning to be printed in Jackson, where press workers and truck drivers would create and ship the final product. However, for the first time in Roundup's 121-year history, there wouldn't be a newspaper edition for its loyal readers. No city council updates or court and arrest reports, no photos of kids with their prize-winning 4-H projects. If you don't know what 4-H is, that's like some agricultural stuff. It's pretty cool. My sister was in 4-H, so we knew about cows. You like cows? You a big cow fan? I like cows.
I like cheese.
Well, that's where it comes from.
Some of it.
That's the source.
Some of it.
I ain't. Well, if it's coming from somewhere else, I ain't eating that cheese. I'm gonna tell you that right now. That's probably some cheese that.
I like some good manchego. Manchego comes from sheep.
I'm gonna totally take your word for that. So no sports scores, no obituaries, marriages, and divorces. Nothing. O'Hare was among the 30 employees across 8 newspapers in 5 counties who lost their jobs early Wednesday after Illinois-based News Media Corporation suddenly closed without warning. The company, which called itself the Voice of Small Town America on its website, also operated small papers in Arizona, Illinois, South Dakota, and Nebraska. According to WyoFile, the company's Wyoming newsrooms had undergone rounds of painful cuts and consolidations in recent years. However, while circulations were down compared to peak times, readership was more recently trending solidly upward. Even so, the company said in its memo sent to staffers on Wednesday that it had reached a point where continuing business is no longer feasible. We're all grieving, said O'Hare, who was in the Roundup's downtown office wrapping up what she could before leaving on Wednesday. She had heard that sister papers had already turned off the lights and left their keys behind. That's pretty sad. All of my colleagues that I've spoken to are heartbroken, she said. They're devastated for not only their jobs, because we all love journalism so much, but also what this means to each of our communities who rely on our local newspaper for the information that they need to stay informed. The Roundup's office was located right off Main Street in a heavy traffic area where regular morning walkers would drop by to guess this week's mystery photo or leave a news tip or simply stop to chat with their local reporters. It's still like the traditional feel of a newsroom, she said. We had a lot of folks come in and visit just because maybe they were lonely or didn't have anyone else to talk to, so it felt like this was an outlet for the community. And there's a lot more here.
Yeah.
For the sake of time, I guess maybe we could kind of talk about this. I mean, so this basically just folded in the middle of the night, kind of like a Colts thing, like
Yeah.
somebody sneaking out of a lease for their studio kind of thing. It's one of those things.
Yeah, it is, and it's really distressing to see this. As I pointed out in there, a lot of communities, a lot of rural communities, still do not have good internet
Right.
connectivity. A lot of people don't use the internet, don't know how to use it well. A lot of people don't necessarily have the devices to use it, and local media outlets such as a newspaper, such as radio or television, can provide critical information. When they're talking about obituaries, there's things like obituaries, divorces, marriages, house sales, that sort of thing, which are critical to people staying connected in these communities. But other things like a town meeting. I remember reporting a few years back on this particular issue, where there were towns where the residents were having tension because they were putting town meetings up on the village's or the town's website, but many people couldn't access the website, or they didn't know how to access the website. And then they were hearing about town meetings where decisions were being made, residents were being asked to speak up, and they weren't at the meeting, they didn't know anything about it. They were accusing local leaders of malfeasance, and it was breaking down trust. And we have a low trust society already in the US, and this is what happens when small town media outlets when this happens to small town media outlets. And I'm from Chicago, you're in Chicago, Uncle Warren, we know you were in New York before that. We have these urban blinders on about media outlets and internet access and getting the news, but there are a whole lot of places around the country where they don't have those choices. And even in areas where we do have multiple media outlets, they're not necessarily going to focus on hyper-local news that really directly impact people's day-to-day lives.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I grew up in a small town with the local paper there too, and a lot of people relied on it. Sure, there was a bigger paper on the Gulf Coast that people would read on their Sunday mornings, but the big paper on the coast didn't have a lot of the local stuff that you're only going to get in these local papers like that. And people, like I said, 121 years that thing has been around.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time to be serving one community like that, and for all of it to just go, just like that. It's
Yeah.
some, a lot of younger people maybe are used to like quick change like that, but some older people are just like, who are used to, they get into a routine of reading their news from certain places, and all of a sudden it's gone. It's like, well, where do I go now?
And
I
the
guess
other
you
thing to
come
keep
to us.
Well, what I was also going to mention also is that a lot of times, back in the day of old school journalism, young people would train at these smaller papers.
Mm-hmm.
They would be
Yeah.
writing up obituaries, or they'd be riding around with police scanners and showing up at things that were happening. And that's how these kids learned their craft. And without these smaller papers, or in these smaller outlets, what kind of opportunities are we going to have to train the next generation of journalists? The other thing also, just about print media, and I say this because up until recently, I was the editor of a print magazine. We had a digital component, but I wasn't the editor over there. And what I got to see is with digital, it's 24/7 news cycle. They were throwing stuff out as quickly as possible. When you're doing print, you have the luxury of a little bit of time. And you can say, okay, this is the story, this is what's coming in. And this is the news as it is emerging, and you can check the facts, you can do interviews, and it's a different type of media. And when you see newspapers being lost, you're losing that the richness that print media can offer communities, which is the reliability, being able to check the sources, to slow things down a little bit. There's a bit of a pause, and that's good for journalism.
So let's move on. We've got a lot to cover
Yeah.
today. So this next one here, we're talking about. I know people were talking about how what's his name, Hegseth, the Secretary of War. I'm not calling it that. He's the Secretary of Defense. It's just like the Gulf of America. I'm not calling it the Gulf of America. This is some dumb stuff. Anyway, he gathered a meeting of all the generals. At least 1 star and up, I think, from around the world here in the United States. And let me get over here. I really need hotkeys. I'm going to get some hotkeys. I promise. Be like, hotkeys? What are you talking about? Don't worry about it. It's an insider thing. So Trump tells generals to use cities as military training grounds. Wait a minute. Yeah, so this is at the Trump decided, all these generals, let me get in on this. So Trump told hundreds of senior military commanders yesterday that the country is under invasion from within and that they should use American cities as training grounds to target domestic enemies. Remarks that drew warnings of encroaching fascism as the president expands his invasion and occupation of U.S. communities. So he was speaking to nearly 800 U.S. generals and admirals stationed around the world who were summoned to Quantico, Virginia no, they put defense secretary. They didn't put the secretary of war. That's fun. Good for you. Good for you, Common Dreams. Summoned by Pete Hegseth for a highly unusual assembly. Trump told military leaders they would be used against the American people. They're vicious people that we have to fight, the president said, referring in this case to critical journalists whom he called sleazebags. Just like you, we have to fight vicious people. Mine are a different kind of vicious, he said. Trump then said that cities run by the radical left Democrats, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, are very unsafe places. And we're going to straighten them out one by one. Just like you did D.C. You know what happened in D.C.? They were there for 30 days, and then the Republicans in the House just said, we're done. So, and that's what all this is like, mostly bluster, right? I don't think the troops in Los Angeles actually did anything. I think they were just like, I don't know why we're here. But he goes, this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. He continued, this is a war too. It's a war within. And that's what, this deal with Venezuela, they're trying to do regime change there. They may say they're not, but they're trying to do regime change there. Blowing up the boat. I read an article, turns out that there was a lady saying her husband was a fisherman and she was on that boat and he never came back. And they never checked the boat for drugs. They never checked the boat for weapons. They just blew up the boat and went on their merry way. And that's here in what's called our backyard, I guess, right? So, referring to Hegseth, Trump said, and I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military. Why? Why would you want to have training grounds in urban cities unless you're going to have urban warfare? And it's not just against, the baddies. It's going to be against everybody who opposes this. And that's why people need to rise up now and stop this business before it even gets started. Responding to this, Noreen Shah, Director of Government Affairs at the ACLU's Equality Division, told Common Dreams that when Trump said the enemy within, he meant those who disagree with him. We don't need to spell on how dangerous the president's message is, but here goes. Military troops must not police us, let alone be used as a tool to suppress the president's critics, Shah said. In cities across the country, the president's federal deployments are already creating conflict where there is none and instilling profound fear in people who are simply trying to live their lives and exercise their constitutional rights. Our country and democracy deserve far better than this. So Trump also said during his speech, only in recent decades did politicians somehow come to believe that our job is to police the far reaches of Kenya and Somalia, where America is under invasion from within. That sounds like some paranoid, delusional stuff right there.
Yeah, and you're sending people in against your own people. You're going. This is happening in American cities. It's not going off to far off countries, and they're not defending the city from an outside invasion. It's from within. They're using the language. The language here is being very carefully chosen
Right.
to disorient people and to set people against each other.
Well, and there's been enough dumbing down of the American people to where this kind of stuff would actually work.
Yeah.
Probably about 20, 30 years ago, people would see right through this, but now it's just like there's so much information out there, you don't really know what to believe anymore. So he turned his attention to radical left lunatics that are brilliant people, but dumb as hell when it comes to common sense. Well, broken clock there. Falsely accusing the previous administration of opening U.S. borders to Venezuelans after the country's government emptied its prison. Yeah, so all this propaganda bullshit that he's talking about here. He said D.C. was the most unsafe, the most dangerous city in the U.S., and to a large extent beyond, whereas their crime was going down in D.C. and in some of these other cities too. So it's not a crime thing. It's a fear thing. It's a, look what we're doing in the big cities. If we can do these in the big cities, we can do these anywhere kind of situation, right? So he said we're going into Chicago very soon. He said, although Operation Midway Blitz is already underway in the city. Although I haven't seen any troops around here, but I haven't been downtown lately, so I don't know. And now he wants to go into Portland. And I was reporting on this yesterday. They're fighting back there. He ordered troops to invade Portland, despite the city ranking 72nd in violent crime in the U.S., according to FBI data. Again, it's not about crime. It's about control, right?
Yeah.
Or at least the appearance of control. So in an apparent moment of doubt, Trump asked during a Sunday NBC News interview, well, wait a minute, am I watching things on television that are different from what's happening? Recounting how Democratic Oregon Governor Tina Kotek asked Trump to not deploy federal forces to Portland, Trump said during Tuesday's speech that unless they're playing false tapes, this looks like World War II, your place is burning down. But I was listening to Kevin over on Black Bear News yesterday, and he's talking about Portland too, and he said Portland is not nearly as bad as it's made out to be on there. And I think what they're doing is they're taking small pockets of cities and showing what's going on there and saying this is what's happening all over the city. And that's just straight up cherry picking and propaganda. So, yeah, so amid small scale protests in Portland over Trump's authoritarian ICE crackdown, Fox News aired a report conflating video footage from 2020 protests against the police murder of George Floyd with the recent images. Anti-ICE protesters have burned an American flag and set small street fires in Portland, but no structures have been burned down. Trump also said that any anti-ICE protesters who throw objects at federal vehicles or agents can be met with unlimited force. So you're gonna come after regular ass citizens with like live ammunition. That's what unlimited force sounds like to me, right?
That's what it sounds like to me too.
Yeah, because what are they doing now? Tear gas, rubber bullets,
unlimited. I mean, this language is very deliberate.
Mm-hmm. It's very open ended. Like it's intended to make you think the most outrageous things, right? There's no specifics there to ground you in reality. Right. So critics swiftly pushed back on Trump's suggestion of using American cities as military training grounds. Congressman Seth Moulton, a Democrat out of Massachusetts, former Marine Corps combat veteran who served multiple tours during the U.S. invasion and occupation of Iraq, said on Twitter that today's speeches by Trump and Hegseth were weak portrayals of leadership by two small, insecure men. The U.S. cities should never be training grounds for the military, Moulton added. There is no enemy from within. The reputational and operational damage being done to our military will take years to undo. The Democratic Association of Secretaries of State said on social media, this is authoritarian, unconstitutional, and a direct threat to our democracy. Yeah, and I think they've already filed a lawsuit in Oregon against Trump, and these other cities are just going to do the same. It just seems like Trump knows that he's not going to be able to get away with this stuff, but he likes to stir the crap anyway. He knows it's going to end up in court, and he's just rolling the dice to see if one of his judges that he appointed is going to rule on the case or not, right? And sometimes that has been the case. And yeah,
this could be testing. It could be testing. Okay, let's try this out, see what the response is, and then make decisions from there. It's not just the courts; it's also the people.
Right. Well,
it's training ground for the military. It's training ground for everybody who's making observations about human behavior when put under these kind of stressors.
I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead because we're like running way behind.
We are. It's our first show, folks. We thank you for bearing with us.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff is kind of evergreen. We can talk about some of this stuff next week too. But I did want to go into this about the Goodwill CEO.
Oh Lord, yes. Okay, a little bit of background on this, folks. You may have been hearing lately out of corporate America this idea of skills-based hiring. It's a way of saying, look, you guys don't have to go into massive amounts of student loan debt just to get an education that you may or may not need for a job that people did not need that education for just a few years or a few decades ago. And so we're going to make a point of skills-based hiring rather than whether people have a degree. This does not address, of course, the issue of student loan debt or the way it is structured or managed in this country. It doesn't talk about the rising cost of higher education or training in this country. It just is a nice platitude coming out of corporate America. And here we have the head of Goodwill is coming out and saying, yeah, we have this policy, but our hiring managers are not necessarily respecting that.
Right. So, so some more bad news for job seekers, especially non-grad Gen Zers. Just because an employer claims it's ditching degree requirements to recruit more diverse talent, that doesn't mean its hiring managers are actually doing it. Yeah. Very smoke and mirrors there. When major employers like Google, Microsoft, IBM, and Apple all eliminated their long-held degree requirements for jobs, other firms rushed to follow their example, but that promise may be limited to their job ads, right? False advertisement for jobs? Wow, you never hear that. You know how they say, like, there's like, oh, these job openings, and then you apply for these jobs, and then you get this. They have AI that goes over your resumes, right? I don't even think they have. A lot of places now don't even have human eyes that look at your resume anymore. So the AI goes through, looks for, I guess, keywords or certain types of things, and you may not be able to talk to somebody to at least explain in more detail what your experience is. You may never get to that point because the AI will say, nah, you go in the rejection file. So Goodwill CEO Steve Preston told Fortune that while most CEOs have good intentions, they can't control every interview or job offer. And so the promise of skills-first hiring may not be reaching the millions of jobless Gen Zers who need it. So right now, employers are consistently saying they want to hire for skills, not necessarily degrees, Preston said, but the proof is in the pudding. Not everybody does it. He added, what I hear from a lot of people is, yeah, the top says we need to do this, but when it gets to the hiring professionals, it doesn't always trickle down. The charity has over 650 job centers and saw over 2 million people use its employment services last year. And Preston said that he's preparing for an influx of jobless Gen Zers thanks to automation. Of course, that's another thing, too. You're going to see a huge, you're probably already seeing it now, a huge bottleneck in people trying to get jobs that are being eliminated for humans and are being replaced by AI. You remember the old learn to code? Well,
learn to code, yeah.
Yeah. And now the AI does that. So now you got to learn something else. So all those people were like, dag nabbit, I've been doing this thing for 4 to 5 years. Now I got to learn how to code. All right. And so they learn how to code and like, dag nabbit, I got my job taken away again. What the hell? Right? And you want the people like, yeah, AI is coding itself, Nina. Yeah, definitely. Uh-huh.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and that's Gen Zers, and you still have old farts like me who are out there looking for jobs, and I have skill sets and a degree, and it's still, they want to underpay you because they want to hire younger people so they can burn them out and use them up and then toss them away and then get another young person in there. And they ain't got to pay nobody, right? And now with automation, it's making it even worse. While the opportunities for young people without degrees are certainly growing, Preston says they're ultimately still more likely to face unemployment than Gen Zers with a degree. Yeah, I mean, art appreciation degrees probably aren't going to get you a job unless you're in an art field, maybe. But that's kind of a niche thing, and I'm not crapping on art majors. You go to college, do whatever you want, but if you're trying to get a job afterwards, you probably need to think about that. So, what I'm seeing is of the overall employment, people without college degrees have no jobs. The 65-year-old CEO, who formerly served as the 14th United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, revealed research has shown that the issue is even more acute for young men. It's much harder to find a job, Preston says. It's really hitting college students right now in the marketplace. It's really hitting young adults without college degrees. Well, that's the thing, too. You see a lot of kids now who are opting out of college, maybe going to trade schools or just getting on the job training at whatever they're doing. And some of these people are making like pretty good bank without a college degree. But, some of these things like, if you want to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, you need college. You can't just, I guess you could go online to Phoenix University.
Well, here's the thing. I would say that Tom Hall mentioned earlier in this that if you're trying to denigrate education, you have an uneducated population, which is its own set of problems. The other thing is I'm all about going into the trades, but a lot of those trades require people to be physically healthy. Mm-hmm. And if a person physically has a disability, at this point, or is ill, or doesn't have a lot of strength, that can be its own set of problems for people. And so having at the least like an associate's degree where you've got the general education requirements, written English, math, basic knowledge of science, math, history, that sort of thing can be incredibly useful if you have to switch careers or pursue higher education. So that's its own set of issues.
And I highly recommend, like, if you're about to become a high school graduate, to look into junior colleges, right?
Yep.
Get your associate's degree first, because the first 2 years of college is you're getting your core curriculum out of the way anyway, right? Your basic stuff that you need, and then once you get in your third and fourth year, that's when you start getting more into subjects dealing with your major. Right. But another good thing about these junior colleges, or community colleges, as they're probably called now, is they do have trade schools built within them.
Yep, they do.
And because I remember I went to Mississippi Gulf Coast Junior College, Perkinston campus, down on the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast, and they had trade schools within. Yeah, so you could go there, get your 2-year degree, get your core curriculum out of the way if you were moving on to a 4-year college. Much less expensive than going to a 4-year college right off the bat. And like I said, and during that 2 years, you may decide you want to do something as a trade rather than going a full 4 years. So it gives you time to figure out what you want to do with your college career, I guess, right? So I highly recommend, like, community colleges, that kind of thing. At least look into them and see, what they provide for you. So, and And yeah, so we're basically at the end of that. So,
Cool.
but yeah, that's the thing with jobs these days. You really don't know what the requirements are these days, right? If you're an older person, do you put your college graduation date on there? Because they can look on that and
Hmm.
see that when you graduated college and say, wow, this is an older person. I can get away with ageism without getting in trouble. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't even,
Yeah.
I put my college degree on there, but I do not put the
Put the
date
date.
I graduated because I'm old. I'm really
And the other
old.
thing I would just point out is that most jobs in the end are through social networks and professional networks. And that's why they when we talk about fake job postings, they'll post something for the job. They already know who they want for it, but the posting is up there so that they have proof that they actually tried to hire, so they don't face a discrimination lawsuit.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah. So I think since we have a few more things we need to get to,
We
maybe we
do.
can
We
just
do.
go
We have to
ahead.
move on.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to wait a minute if I can do this right. I practiced this the other day, and so I think we need to move on to the catch of the day. What do you
We
think?
really do, and we will talk about the other things later on.
Yeah, a lot of those things. It's stuff that we can. It's like I said, it's kind of
We will come back to
evergreen.
it. Yep.
Yeah, we'll probably come back to a lot of that stuff
No,
next
we're
week.
not. Yeah, we're not ending the show at all. We're just moving into the main stories here.
Oh
But
yeah,
thank you,
we're
thank
in
you.
the
No, we're cooking.
we're in the meat of it, as they say. So we're not. I love how Yonita's like, "Don't go away. I just got here. I love you.
Yeah, no.
We
Nobody's
love you
going
too,
to
dear.
ending the
We
show.
do."
We love you too. You're fantastic.
So yeah,
All
this is
right.
it's the catch of the day, Lainey. You want to talk? Get us started on this?
All right, so I like to read The Economist. It's one of my favorite. Hey, Desert Manis, I love The Economist, and I really love their perspective and the breadths of stories. And they came up with this story, and it's about New York City, but it is a story that I've been following for a while, and it's all over the. It applies to the entire country. So New York City already has very strong tenant protections. They're actually increasing their tenant protections, and they're making it even harder to evict people from rental housing. Now, evictions are bad for society. They wreak all kinds of havoc with people's credit, their ability to obtain future housing. So everybody, including landlords, usually want to avoid evictions. Nobody wants to have to go through the eviction process. And I want to point out to folks here, a lot of people think that an eviction is when your landlord kicks you out. Actually, it's when a court judge tells you you have to leave. People don't realize that a landlord can ask you to leave, send you a notice saying that they're planning to file an eviction, but you're not required to leave until a judge tells you you have to, and a sheriff's deputy or a special constable comes to your door to escort you out. So I want people to understand that. People don't understand their rights in these situations, and you need to know about them. In the Substack show notes, I do have a resource document from FindLaw, which gives you some background on that. And again, you should be contacting your local tenants group, the State Attorney General office. Your city may also have special protections for tenants. That's a segue there, but I just wanted to mention that to folks. But one of the things that's going on, and what the Economist is pointing out in New York, and this is happening in other areas as well and has been happening, is some of these very strong tenant protections are actually making it harder for people to obtain rental housing. There's an article in there in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, there's a whole bunch of housing that's empty, sitting empty, because of their strong tenant protections. People who own these units don't want to bother having a tenant in. And what we're talking about here are not huge apartment complexes. We're talking about single family homes or small buildings where you have 1 to 4 units. The owners of these small rental properties, 1 to 4 units, 70% of them are independent owners. They're called mom and pop landlords. They are not big corporations. They are not big slumlords. They are they're individuals and couples that just that have an extra space or an extra property somewhere, or they have a small building. 70% of those mom and pop operators also manage their own property, so they don't even have a separate management company who's handling all this. So they have to be very concerned about who they bring in as a tenant. And some of these tenant protections sound great and can be great if you're dealing with major corporate landlords. They're not necessarily, however, going to protect the interests of a small-time landlord against a tenant who's acting in bad faith, such as somebody who comes in with no intention of paying the rent, or a tenant who is cooking meth in the unit. And yes, that happens.
That's me. I'm the tenant. I love me some meth cooking. Come on, what's
yeah. And so what can happen here is that it can make it very difficult for a landlord to get a tenant who's acting in bad faith, who is refusing to pay the rent, who is refusing, who is damaging the unit or harassing other tenants to get them out. And what is going on is they're saying, we're not even going to bother with this. And either they will simply leave their properties empty. They will sell that property to a corporation that might knock the property down and put in a larger building, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in terms of expanding housing in the area, but in some cases can make it more difficult for people to get into those units. Because the other thing that landlords will turn around and do is say, okay, we're going to create higher standards for tenants. So if a person has ever had a criminal record, if a person has ever had an eviction, if a person is self-employed or unemployed, if a person is on benefits, they may not rent to them because they are concerned about the trouble of getting them evicted. And I wanted to point out that there are other approaches that can be used. And as Wesley Donaldson says, one thing that they can be doing is expanding, building more housing. I think there's an Axios article in there. I think it's in San Francisco. They're talking about taking all that empty office space, which actually there's quite a bit around the country. Post-pandemic, people have been working from home a lot more. They can take that office space when possible and convert it into residential housing. And that would add more housing to the housing market and could bring down those rents. There are other approaches as well, and I wanted to point these out to folks. Some areas have landlord-tenant mediation programs. And again, check out that Substack with the show notes in there. And there's been a great deal of success with community mediation programs that can prevent evictions from even happening. These are third-party mediators that will bring together tenants and landlords who are having issues and will work out, they will mediate the conflict. In some cases, they can work out a payment plan, or they can adjust expectations on both sides. In other cases, what they can do is, if the tenant needs to leave, they can broker the situation so that the tenant leaves without having to go through the eviction. The landlord doesn't have to go through the eviction. The tenant does not have bad information on a tenant screening report or on their credit report, and tenant has a better chance of getting a rental in the future. So that's one option. Another option is something that they're doing in Oregon for people who have low income, is they will actually have a training course. They have a program where people get training in landlord-tenant law, in budgeting, in money, in expectations. They help these people put together a portfolio, and these folks go to landlords and to house management companies. They can show that they've been through this training, they've completed they have a certificate, show that they have an understanding of what it is to be a tenant. They get copies of their tenant screening reports. And then what they also do is, landlord, if the tenant is unable to pay their rent or meet their obligations, they will actually guarantee a payment to the landlord for a certain period of time. It's not quite a co-signer situation, but the landlord has less risk, and it's an initiative to provide rental housing. So I'm bringing, this is a complex issue, as everybody has pointed out. As Tom is saying here, Chicago corporate landlords set income minimums at 3 to 4 times the cost of rent. Some of them, they have these sky high credit scores. Some will not rent to you if you can't document your income, which can be difficult, say, if you are self-employed or between jobs or you're a student. There are all kinds of situations that can make it very challenging to get rental housing. And while I really would like to see housing considered a right, abolishment of corporate landlords, housing should not be a commodity. I would like to see that, but I think it's important that we note that some of the solutions to this, or some of the so-called tenant protections, can make it easier for tenants who are currently in rental housing, but very difficult for those who are seeking it. And that there needs to be, in addition to structural change, which I'm all about, there needs to be alternative programs such as mediation, such as guarantees for tenants, and other options such as that.
Says Laney is pinging. Is that some sort of all right, what is she pinging? Peace Dove, let me know what you're talking about there. You sound fine to me. I know, maybe pinging is like some sort of like young urban thing. I don't know. Is that slang? Is that like it's like street slang? Are you pinging? You mentioned meth a while ago, so I was like, maybe that's what he was talking about.
Maybe.
No, I don't know. Or maybe you're pinging because you're throwing out this mad knowledge that the kids are eating up like Tide Pods over here. Sorry, I don't think the Tide Pod, that was like a couple of years ago, something like that. Yeah. So, was there a particular page that you wanted me to pull up right now from one of these?
No, I think we're good on this. The information for reference is all in the Substack. Please do check that out and subscribe. That will also we'll be sending that out, so you'll have on Wednesday morning, so you'll have a reminder about tuning into the show. But all of these show notes, all these resources are going to be in there for you, just so you know.
Guys, is Laney's mic a little loud? I'll bring it back down a little bit. So I think you're okay. Because sometimes it sounds good to us, and then when you put it out on the air, it's just like, ooh.
Yeah, we're doing our best with that. Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, this is we had a practice run the other day, but we didn't really go over like stories and stuff like that. It was more like getting the technical stuff down. So okay, all right, cool. Desert Mana says not loud at all, so we just pump this up just a little bit. Okay.
Warren is pinging with that haircut. There you go.
I know, right? I do it myself. Yeah. You know, the last time I went to a barber? Guess the year the last time I went to a barber.
It's set for cardioid. I think it. Well, in any case, thanks for letting us know, Chuck. We'll work on it. Thank you.
No, yeah. It's she's using the same settings from the other day. Let's not get nitpicky about it.
No, we'll work on it though. We do appreciate the feedback. Absolutely.
Yeah. So in New York they were doing, and once when the pandemic was hitting and people were leaving the offices, right? And they were working from home. And then once the pandemic was over, there was a lot of, I don't want to go back to the office. So you ended up seeing a lot of people using these temporary office spaces, or just working from home, and a lot of commercial office space downtown in Manhattan was going vacant. And they were losing money, and they were getting to the point where they were trying to force employers to make people to come back to the offices, right? To fill these things. So, but there was talk about, I don't know if Mamdani has mentioned this in his campaign or not for New York mayor, but converting commercial office space in Manhattan to residential, right? Because you have in New York, you have NYCHA, their New York City Housing Authority, and what they've been doing, they've been building these buildings, residential buildings, where it's a split, right? Like you have like your more wealthy people with the upper levels or whatever, and then people who were who had vouchers, housing vouchers and stuff like that, would get part of the housing too. But it was one of those things where if you had if you were what is it called? I can't remember. It's what it's called when they give you a housing voucher. It's like some number thing. Anyway, I want to say 4-H, but that's the agriculture thing. But what it was is people were being you couldn't go out the front door. You had to go out the back of the building if you were a low income person in these buildings.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. And it was just,
It was bad. Now, the one thing that we know is that in Chicago, they were talking about doing this. Some people pointed out that some of the Chicago high-rise buildings, office space, were not really going to be easily converted to residential housing. I have to say, I worked in the Merck for about 5 years. I was not working for the Merck, but I was in one of their office suites. And that was going to be, I think it was going to be tough to do, but I think that it definitely could be explored. It could absolutely be explored as an option. And I mean, downtown living can be great for folks, and it would be great for the great for the restaurants, for the entertainment and hospitality industries as well, if they can do it. But again, I do believe in more housing. I think that's an absolute option, and it can help bring those costs down. And I believe that there also, however, do need to be incentives for landlords to rent, because we need to have a situation where people can get access to housing and not have to couch surf or eventually become homeless. And that is not what we want. It should not be happening. And of course, I'd love to see real housing co-ops and I guess a lot more communitarian approach to housing in the future. But we do need to go on to our next story.
Yeah, it's actually, we're getting to the recurring tide, talking about stories that have been covered before. Obviously not on this show since it's our first one, but since we're both radio vets, this was kind of a story kind of close to both of our hearts, about AM radio, right? Hang on a second. Why are you doing that?
Thank you, Desert Mantis, for showing up. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mantis. Appreciate you, bud.
All right. So here's a story. Now, first of all, I have full disclosure. This is from Radio Inc. magazine. Until fairly recently, I was the editor of the print edition of this publication. It's a fantastic publication, but this is a story that I've been following for years, since before I took work with them, and they continue to follow it. What happened was a couple of years back, there were an issue with some automobile manufacturers that were taking AM radio out of their vehicle dashboards. Then Ford announced that it was going to take AM radio out of vehicle dashboards. Now, first of all, this violates FCC regulations, which requires automobile manufacturers to have radios, AM radio, and without interference in their dashboards. There was a concern with electric vehicles that the electricity was interfering with AM signals. There is a way of working around that, but automobile manufacturers were snapping about it. But when Ford made the announcement, pressure within the U.S., people just went nuts. And the radio industry in particular came together. We started to see legislators come together, and Ford backed off that plan. The other thing that happened was that Ted Cruz and Ed Markey, the senators from very different sides of the aisle, came together to push forth the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. And it was doing fairly well, but the term expired before it was able to advance. It has been reintroduced, and it has been moving forward. Now, with the government shutdown, that is presenting some possible issues here. But I want to explain why you've got people on both sides of the aisle supporting this. AM radio, first of all, we're talking about local media outlets. And I want to remind folks, there are a lot of rural areas that don't have a lot of local outlets, AM radio travels far. Its signal is very consistent. And even though it's a little scratchy, so you don't have a lot of music, it's perfectly fine for news and talk. There are whole areas of this country that are very dependent on AM radio, particularly since it has the signal is more powerful than FM. And oh, by the way, when it comes to your radio receiver, tuning into AM, I have been told, is less battery power, which is important in emergencies. AM radio provides vital news and information. It is also the source of many what they call agricultural radio stations that serve rural farming communities. And these provide crop reports, weather reports, news and information, also information. Hey, Jerry, good to see you. Thank you so much. What it does is it brings this news and information, including information of impending weather disasters, to these rural farming communities. And in fact, just checking something out here. Cats Radio Group reported a few years ago that 81% of agricultural workers report listening to the radios while working. Many of them are using radios in tractors or in trucks as they're going around. And again, in a time of increased weather activity, that can be very critical to safety. So keeping AM radio in vehicles, particularly in rural areas where there is not internet reception, poor FM reception, is very important for public safety and the information that working people need to go about their jobs. There is also the fact that in the U.S., we have an emergency alert system. Part of that is what's called the primary entry point system. And that is a bunch of radio stations. I think there's 77 now. Throughout the country that have been hardened against disaster. And what I've been told is that this can mean that they're located in underground bunkers. I've actually seen some of the insides. They have meals ready to eat. They've got separate ventilation systems. Their transmitters are hardened against a possible EMP attack. And so they can continue to function to bring life-saving news and information to communities around the country. The key thing to keep in mind is that the vast majority, and I want to say it's between like 73 or 74 of those stations, are AM. So when you eliminate AM radio from vehicles, which I will tell you right now, will eliminate AM radio in general because the stations will not be able to sustain not being able to reach drivers. I'll just tell you that right now. That you're eliminating the backbone of this critical emergency alert system. So this is ill thought out plan by car manufacturers. I strongly support and advocate for keeping AM radio in cars, in which is what FCC regulations also require. And this is what's going on right now. It is making its way through the legislature. It's moving forward. I'm hoping that it does get signed up. And again, this is bipartisan. But I want people to know about this. We've got information in the Substack for what you can do from the National Association of Broadcasters, from what you can do to support keeping AM radio alive in communities.
Just to remind people about the difference between AM and FM transmissions, right? So FM is more of like a line of sight kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And whereas AM is kind of similar to like ham radio, doesn't it? The signal bounce off the atmosphere and go and travel that way. So it's not a curve, but it seems like it covers more of the planet, or at least more of the region than FM would. And like you said, in times of emergency, right? A lot of these FM towers are not going to be sufficient enough for a larger scale, especially the people out in the boonies who may only be able to get AM radio out there too.
And again, if you have a critical emergency, the hardened stations are set to work on AM. And so that the primary entry point. So that right there would be a massive undertaking if that had to change. And people will say, well, can't we get information from our phones? Well, you can, as long as you have a power source and the cell towers remain.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way it is. But more importantly, well, not more importantly, but of equal importance, again, is that the AM radio stations around the country are the source of local news, local information, those weather reports, information about school ball games, that sort of thing that are very critical to communities. And when those towers get decommissioned, they're not going back up. And so at this point, and I believe very strongly that we need to be fighting for local independent media. And keep in mind that most radio stations are independent. They're not owned by major corporations. It may seem like that, but that is not actually the case in the US. And we're fighting to keep radio in communities for the same reason that I encourage people to fight to keep local newspapers in communities. It's not just about tornadoes. It's about access to a free, independent media.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably why ham radios are going to be critical too, especially if you do have situations where there's like nukes or EMPs or something like that. Yeah, they're like, well, ham radios are electric too. Well, you can power them off generators and stuff like that to get them to work.
Yeah.
And you know, like the thing that you said about the phone, it's like people are so dependent on their phone, they don't realize that a phone is just going to be worthless during a storm, especially if the cell tower is messed up, right?
Well, yeah, this happened recently in North Carolina when they had that horrific hurricane, and we actually Radio Inc. interviewed somebody there. She was in her house without power, without any kind of service, and she didn't know what was going on. And her neighbor came by a couple days later and said, "Hey, they've got stuff going on here. There's relief efforts. I'm getting all the information off the radio." Well, what do you mean the radio? Oh, I have a clock radio in my attic. So she went and grabbed the clock radio and turned it on, and she was able to get news and information that could offer her and her family some help. You've also got a situation here where people are using their automobile radios, and that's again why some people don't have radios in their home. They don't have access to radios, but they can turn on their car radios. Well, if it's been eliminated from vehicles, there goes that other lifeline. The other thing to keep in mind is that radio is free. If you have a receiver and you can buy a radio at a junk sale or a garage sale for a few bucks, you can buy them off Amazon or anywhere else for $10. You can get a new radio. You've got it, and it's got AM frequency on it and AM FM. You've got a whole lot of news information and entertainment that you don't have to pay for and that can't be tracked. You could technically track somebody, but it would be very difficult to do that with a regular radio. So it's anonymous listening. You have those advantages as well. But in any case, I encourage folks to check out what's going on with the AM for Every Vehicle Act.
All right, folks, now for something completely different. It's stupidity on display. It is a clownfish school. It is. You know it. I know it. And you say, what's this clownfish school business? Well, this is some dumb stuff right here. Inspecting rumor claiming pregnant women overdosed on Tylenol during trying to prove Trump wrong. So a little backstory on this situation here. Apparently that RFK Jr. had made an announcement as the chair of the Secretary of Health and Human Services had mentioned that Tylenol leads to autism, right? Acetaminophen leads to autism. And because this came out of the Trump administration, you had some, we will say, liberal people who decided, well, let's own Trump by poisoning our own bodies. So we can go into this. In September last month, I love it. But in September 2025, like it was 1,000 years ago, it was yesterday. In September, a creator on TikTok posted a video claiming that a pregnant woman was dying because she overdosed on Tylenol, attempting to prove U.S. President Donald Trump wrong for claiming that Tylenol was linked to an increased risk of autism in children. The original TikTok page of the creator who posted the video, Nicole Sirotek, has since disappeared from the platform. However, the video was still available on the creator's other social media accounts, including Instagram. The alleged story also spread to other pages. Ooh, excuse me. such as Facebook, Twitter, and news outlets such as the Gateway Pundit. So this is how the video begins. I don't think we have the link to the video for some reason. That's all right. So it's about, it's going to be 6 a.m. finally. And for those of you who don't follow me on Twitter, I recommend that you do. I got a very frantic call at 4 o'clock in the morning from a husband whose wife is now dying on liver failure of liver failure on a ventilator in an ICU because she was trying to prove that Tylenol doesn't cause autism because of what Trump said on the news. Mind you, that's a Harvard study. Now, whether or not you believe the Harvard study or not is not the issue here. The issue is that she's somewhere between 23 to 25 weeks pregnant, and she overdosed on Tylenol, and she's going to die. She's not going to come off that ventilator, and the guy got my phone number from somebody. Somebody gave it to them. So this story was purely anecdotal. Despite dozens of other platforms sharing the claim, Sirotech did not provide any evidence that the events she described transpired. We reached out, I guess this is Yahoo News. We reached out to both the original TikTok account before it disappeared and Sirotech's backup TikTok account, seeking evidence that the call took place and the context regarding why a man would call her with this information, but did not immediately receive a response. So I guess they're going to update us on the story. They also reached out to the American Frontline Nurses, which Sirotech founded and of which she serves as executive director. They had not of this writing heard back from the organization. No credible news outlets reporting on the claim. The only original source of the claim came from Sirotech's own storytelling story, making it unfounded and anecdotal. But apparently several hundred people die every year in the U.S. due to overdose from acetaminophen. Because it's people use a lot of Tylenol and they don't think it's like, yeah, if you take too much Tylenol, you could die. So that was according to the Harvard Health Publishing. However, Sirotech has a history of making up or spreading health misinformation. So yeah, let's talk about this business for a second about people doing this dumb stuff to own Trump. Right.
Yeah, we all know. Okay, so first of all, acetaminophen has been the pain reliever of choice recommended by physicians. Okay. By the way, and there's somebody's running around on X showing something from Tylenol from 2017 when they said we don't actually recommend our products for pregnant women, which is true. Their Tylenol is not in the business of recommending anything to anybody. In terms of treating a condition. For a very, very long time, physicians and midwives have been telling pregnant women that, if you are ill, if you have a fever, if you have a headache or a sore throat, you can, take a Tylenol. But that is really the only over-the-counter that's ever been recommended, for a very long time to pregnant women. Some of these studies showed a potential correlation between taking Tylenol and autism, but it's important to note that is the pain reliever of choice. So if a woman who is pregnant has a fever, which by the way, high fevers can cause serious problems in pregnancy on their own, or is in pain or is ill and needs some kind of relief, that is what she is going to be taken. So there's going to obviously be a correlation there. Whether it is a cause has not yet been proven. But the whole thing while we're calling this clownfish school is not about the claims of Kennedy or Trump. What we're talking about is that there is this social media meme essentially going around saying that women are publicly taking overdoses of Tylenol and then ending up in the hospital just to own Trump. And that does not appear to be the case. The person who's making this claim, again, if you look at her American Frontline Nurses, she talks about MAHA right on the website. It's right there on her website. The other thing to keep in mind is that, why is a man whose wife is dying calling her about somebody taking about his wife? And if she overdosed on something, there could have been many other reasons why somebody would overdose. And also keep in mind that these so-called TikTok videos of women deliberately doing this, staged. People stage videos all the time.
Yeah.
They do. Now, again, Tylenol has, and any drug that you take is going to have side effects and possible consequences. Tylenol, particularly, and alcohol do not mix. That has been established, and there's even some controversy about just how little you need to be drinking with Tylenol to actually cause an adverse effect. That is absolutely the case. But the idea that there are irresponsible women going around chugging down Tylenol simply to upset the current administration, there isn't evidence for this. And I want to point out, folks, just because you see a video or a photograph online doesn't mean you have the whole story. And I don't know why anybody should have to explain this to anybody, but we know people set this stuff up just as rage bait.
Yeah, a lot of people trying to get attention. I mean, they did the same thing when Trump got reelected. I even made a parody liberal outrage video about Trump. I was like, ah! And then I was just like, man, whatever. But that's the thing. They want to show their friends that they're outraged. And look at me, I'm making a wild ass out of myself. And the thing they don't understand is it's just like with boycotting stuff. Like I remember, what was it? They boycotted Harley Davidson, right? And this guy, he owned a Harley. He had already bought the Harley. He owned this Harley, and he's sitting there shooting it with a gun in protest to Harley. And like, dude, no, that's not how. Just don't buy it. That's the thing, right? And if you don't like Tylenol, there are other pain medicines that you can take. There was one thing I saw, I can't remember what the article was, but it mentioned something about how autism has been around way longer than Tylenol. So where they're getting, go ahead.
Yeah. I just think, again, people have pointed out, Pisto's making this point. Her mom died from cirrhosis of the liver from Tylenol overdoses. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And that's why no over-the-counter medication, it should be treated casually.
Right.
Nobody wants to do that. It's just that Tylenol has been the over-the-counter pain reliever or fever reducer historically recommended to pregnant women by physicians. Again, Tylenol, the manufacturer of Tylenol, doesn't recommend anything. They're not in a position to do that. They're not doctors. They're not pharmacists. They're a drug maker. But in this particular case, if there's a correlation, I think to tease out a correlation is going to be difficult. I'm sure it could be done, but they would have to tease that out. And by the way, there is something else that is correlated with rates of autism, and that is older men having kids. So I mean, I mean, and again, that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything genetically wrong with them. It could be that men who are on the autism spectrum marry later in life. I mean, there are a whole bunch of different things that are going on here. But in this particular case, we've got this public outrage. Everybody got jumpy. So then content creators got jumpy and jumped on it and created these rage bait videos, which in my view are really not helping matters.
No. Well, again, it's just, that's like people wanting to bring attention to themselves and virtue signaling, that sort of thing. I think that's another thing we can do without is the virtue signaling. I think it's time we need to have some, I mean, we need some plain talk when it comes to stuff like this. We don't need, the people clutching their pearl. Oh, my laws. Yes. Like, oh, no, that's the thing is it's like everything, and everybody's built differently too, like, like P-Stuff was saying, his mom died from cirrhosis of the liver from a Tylenol overdose. Some people, and I'm not saying this is P-Stuff's mom's case, but some people, they don't understand that this is a drug that you're taking. Just because you can get it over the counter, and just because everybody and their mom basically takes it, doesn't mean you have to, you can't take it for granted, right? Like any medication.
Goes for herbal remedy. And it goes for herbal remedies as well. You have all these teas and things that are generally regarded as safe, And that's why they're sold everywhere. But again, there are drug interactions with teas. There are drug interactions with food, like pineapple, or no, grapefruit. Grapefruit. It does interacts with certain drugs very badly. So there's a bunch of different things that you can put in your body, and there can be issues. And that happens with everything.
Yep, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
You know what? I say that, and we haven't done it yet. So I've talked to Lainey about this, and we decided we wanted to, like I do on my morning show, we like to end this show with a little something fun for everybody. Yes, you get the news that you can use, and hopefully that all this information today is going to be beneficial to you and yours, but you need a little levity at the same time too. So apparently in California, have you been to California, Lainey?
I have.
Yeah, I lived out there for a while, and there are thug squirrels out there. Thug life, right? They got the little joint sticking out of their mouth, and the sunglasses. The 8-bit sunglasses. I always love those. Blum, 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 blum. It has thug life on the side. Well, apparently there's some there's some terrorist squirrels in California. Very mean
squirrels.
Yes, very mean squirrel terrorizing California neighborhood. So let's get into this. Residents of a California neighborhood are warning other locals to beware of a, quote, very mean squirrel that has sent at least 2 people to the emergency room. Holy shnikes. Maybe this is what Trump was talking about, bringing this full circle. Maybe this is the terrorist that he's talking about. He wants troops in the cities because of these squirrels. He may be onto something. Jonah Heblack, a resident of the Lucas Valley neighborhood in San Rafael, said she was taking her morning walk recently when the squirrel attacked her leg. It clamped onto my leg. The tail was flying up here. I was like, get it off me. Get it off me. I don't want to touch it. Heblack told KGO TV. That's KGO TV on the West Coast. Another resident, Isabel Campoy, said, I think maybe they're going after these people because of their weird last names. She said she and her daughter were attacked by the rambunctious rodent while walking. Campoy ended up going to the ER with a wound to her arm. These squirrels are like, they said, you're going to F around. Now it's time to find out. So Marie Ayub said her husband, Joe, also had a confrontation with the squirrel when he tried to get the animal to stop biting his wooden fence. It took a big chunk of the wood, and we thought, oh my gosh, he's hungry or something. Joe, my husband, took off his cap and hit it so it can go away, and the squirrel turned around and jumped on his head. She said, I'm your hat now, buddy. How you like me now? Flyers were put up in the neighborhood warning residents to keep an eye out for the attacked squirrel. This is not a joke, the flyers said. More than 5 people have been attacked by a very mean squirrel over the past few days on Diablo Circle and Mount Lassen. Maybe it was Rocky, and he got in a fight with Bullwinkle, and he said, screw this, I'm going to go around and take my frustration out on humans. A representative of the local wildlife hospital said squirrels do not carry rabies. The animals do sometimes turn aggressive when fed by humans, however. So maybe this is news you can use. Don't feed squirrels because they may get angry.
Okay. Uncle Warren, though, we got a problem at my place. So we got a bird feeder out front. And there is this squirrel who just steals the food. And we've done everything we can to keep the squirrel out of there. And I think finally we put like a little reverse dome on it so the squirrel would slide off, but he learned how to navigate that. So now we've taken to putting like a thin layer of like cooking oil over it so he slides off. I mean, this has just been...
Yeah, you got to, I mean, squirrels, I've always found squirrels to be cool. I never had a problem with squirrels like when I've been in a park here in Chicago or in New York or LA or wherever, or even down south. I'm an ally of squirrels, and and I think they know that. They read my squirrel newsletter, and I think so they don't mess with me. But I can understand other humans that they don't trust. Like maybe they want food, and this one's chewing on a fence, thinking, "Wow, this is the worst food I've ever seen. Let me get on this guy's head, and mess him up there." Fun stuff out of California, right? You'd think this would be out of Florida, though, right? Because Florida has all the crazy stuff, so you'd think they'd have crazy squirrels there too. So,
well, I think that for that they have they have the alligators and the crocodiles and the big snakes, and squirrels are probably very low on their totem pole. They're not interested. They're just not going to be that interested.
give the squirrels some nuts, Laney. They're hungry too, and climate change affects their food source too. The trees are dropping.
That's
nuts.
A good point. That's a good point. Oh, also, once I spoke to an exterminator, and he said that one of the things that he does when he's in a neighborhood is he looks around at the squirrels, because the squirrels compete with rats and mice for the food sources. So if you see fat squirrels, the rats and mice are also getting fed, and they're less likely to invade homes. When you see a thin squirrel, that means the animals are starving, and that's when rats and mice will try and get into a home. That's what he told me.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, in New York, you would see that in the summertime, right? You wouldn't see like rats in the house, right, or in the apartment buildings. But then once winter came, and their food sources outside were starting to dry up, that's when you start seeing little mice come in, little chewed holes in the walls and stuff. Ugh. Not a fan of. I'm not a fan of undomesticated rats. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not that they're not cute or anything. It's just you don't know where they've been. You don't know what kind of.
Very, very low. I've seen some city rats. You've seen some right behind Ann Sather's down in Lakeview, because they throw out all the the dried up cinnamon rolls at the end of the day, and I saw rats out there the size of dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about how it is in New York, too. They had just these huge... I saw one time a rat chasing a cat. No lie. And the rat was almost as big as the cat. And I think the cat was like, "What the hell, dude? Why are you you're supposed to be tiny, and I'm supposed to be like batting you around and stuff like that." No. That rat said, "Those days are over." We're taking back everything, so...
All right.
What a great show.
Well,
did you enjoy yourself?
Great. I had a great time. I want to thank everybody for your feedback. Check out our link tree. We have email if you want to get in touch with us by email. If you have suggestions, you have ideas for the show, things that you'd like us to see us cover, please let us know. Also, again, that Substack that has links to our stories that we use today. And I also, again, if you subscribe, then you'll get the notice about the show. But obviously, if you're on YouTube, hit that ring bell button, subscribe and hit that ring bell button so that you'll get notices as well.
Yeah, and as we said, we're going to be adding to the link tree too as we go along with more, as we get involved in more things with the show. It's good to see you back on.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and thank you so much, Tom. And I miss all of you. I've missed working with you guys, and thank you, Ms. Tria, much appreciated. It's great. So I'm looking forward to serving you. I really am, and getting to know you all, to serving the community, doing what I love, and that is bringing news to people. And Uncle Warren, I want to thank you, my friend, for all that you've done for me. Several of you know, I had a death in my immediate family. My younger brother died suddenly, and that's been, that's been tough. And the support from this community that I've received has been so wonderful, and I thank you all for your help. And we will be back next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Time.
That's right.
And with more news.
Yeah. I think the show went well today. It's going to evolve. It's going to change up, and as we get more comfortable with it, probably have more different kinds of segments and stuff like that to you. Kind of give you a variety of stuff while we're giving you that news you can lose. Any final thoughts there?
thank you for those who are sending condolences. I appreciate that. And we do hope to have interviews and guest co-hosts eventually as we get more into this. And thank you, Peace Dove. Thank you all very much. But again, feedback is very welcome regardless of what it is, whether it's positive or negative. We do need that feedback and we want it. So thank you all. And I want to remind everybody, you know, we're looking at a challenging week potentially here with the federal shutdown, with what's going on. We will be monitoring it. I'm not beyond popping in periodically to even before next week to talk about what's happening. We also have the Substack for staying in touch. Uncle Warren, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody. I mean, this is your show too. You know, we're doing this show for you, but we want you to be a part of this show too, right? Yeah, and as new people come in, you know, we can help bring them information they may not know. We usually have, like in my shows, we usually have some really smart people, and it seems like we got a lot of very smart people here in our chats as well, and we appreciate all the comments and everything, all the niceties and everything that you said. Appreciate the support. Like Lainey said, we'll be back next week, same time, same channels, and myself, I will be on the air Friday morning for Morning Extra at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time on this channel. I have to be good on this channel and say things correctly. Otherwise I get beaten, but I pay extra for that. See you later, guys. Bye.